Yeah. Okay, the Jentry Podcast. I know that you will be loving it. We here to break it down so that you start to understand your local government. Who are the leaders? Time to get active, do something about it. Dealing with jobs, the workforce, and affordable housing. Motivate and inspire. Elevate, take it higher. For the next generation. Knowledge is power for your community. Giving you the info that you really need. Time to make a change and a difference. Tune in, don't miss it. It's the Jentry. The Jentry Podcast. The Jentry Podcast. Making a change, switching it up.
Hello and welcome to the Jentry Podcast. Today we have an incredible guest. We have Casey Bradley, who is the city administrator for Sheboygan, Wisconsin. But he's more than that. He is an Air Force veteran. He is a very well-educated person, just looking at his background. And he is really important in the revitalization of the waterfront, the housing expansion, and so much more in Sheboygan. So I'm really excited to get into this. Casey, how you doing today?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. And as I always do, I want to jump right into it. What is the secret sauce? What makes Sheboygan the best place to live in the United States?
Sheboygan is a great community, really high quality of standard of living for the community. We've got, the special sauce is really the community. It's the people, it's the industries, it's the tourism, being on the lake. It's every facet. We've got world-class golf, obviously. I'm sure a lot of people don't know, but Sheboygan is actually the Malibu of the Midwest. We have some of the best surfing on the Great Lakes. We actually have a very big surf culture. We have, historic companies that are family owned, that they've grown their entire history here. Volrath Company just last year celebrated their 150th anniversary in the city. It's the community ties with the business industry. Tourism is second to none here. We have about 1.6 million visitors a year. So yeah, it's a very well balanced community and just a lot to do, getting kind of more of the layers. You've got the industry, you've got arts and culture. We've got some world-class programs for artists in the Kohler Company does a lot, and They've got the Kohler Art Preserve, the Kohler Art Center, and then the Weil Center in the downtown area for performing arts. So, and then obviously, we've got Whistling Straits and world-class golf courses all around the city and all throughout the county. So it's pretty unique.
Wow, Casey. First and foremost, the Malibu of the Midwest. I did not know that. That did not come up in my research, but that is great to hear. That you can have that in the Midwest. You don't even need to go to California for that. So that is very cool. And one thing that we did touch on when we met was the amount of appreciation for art and culture, and even how the business community has invested in it. I think that's very cool. And as I told you before, but half of our viewers are pretty young. So 18 to 23. Gen Z to even early millennials, and investing in the culture of a place is going to be so much more of a important step to take in the future now and into the future. So it's incredible to hear that you guys have been at the forefront of that. But before we jump into the community, I want to jump into your background. So I always ask, did you know you were going to be a city administrator when you were young? What was childhood like? Was this always the dream? Please just share a little insight for us.
No, I kind of found this. I grew up in a military family. My dad, grandfathers, great-grandfathers, everybody served in the military. I did as well. I went into the Air Force, and when I went into the Air Force, I was able to also go to school full-time. So did 2 bachelor's degrees and a double master's degree while I was on active duty. And when I came out, kind of having that public service has always kind of been what you do. So I got into local government and southern Wisconsin. And I started out in accounting as an accounting manager and then progressed from there as a finance director, and then decided to go get another master's degree and went and got my MPA and moved out to North Dakota and ran a county as an administrator out there for about 6.5 years. Came back to Wisconsin in about 2017 and took over as a county administrator, and then transitioned into city administration in about 2020.
So when I think about the journey, it's never just straightforward, and it is. Well, I guess sometimes I have talked to some people where it has been somewhat straightforward, but it sounds like you definitely had a great path to getting there. Now moving kind of to the X's and O's of the city. Have you guys done comprehensive plan recently? Any strategic planning of
Well, yes and no. We're in the process of doing that. So the comprehensive plan is about 10 to 15 years old, I believe. So we're actually going through that process right now. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where our housing market is just crazy right now. Realtor.com just put an article out, I think it was last week or the week before. Sheboygan, Wisconsin is the hottest real estate zip code in the state of Wisconsin. I think we're number 32 nationwide. We're a community of 50,000. So for us to be recognized like that is pretty significant. So we're kind of planning for and how we believe ultimately the comp plan, the feedback we're getting from the comp plan will ultimately guide the rest of the development, but we're working through, kind of focusing on our higher density in some areas. We've got some pretty large subdivision or a large subdivision that we're looking at getting built out and trying to, using the complete streets design, making sure that's implemented, looking at making sure we're not creating food deserts and making sure we're a livable community for parks. So we're trying to make sure that there's green spaces within less than half a mile or to a quarter mile of all the homes. So really kind of taking that, what really makes it a livable property and something that's desirable rather than just putting up as many houses as we possibly can.
Yeah, that is incredible. Number 32 in the nation, number one in Wisconsin. So, across the nation, we sometimes hear there's a housing crisis or housing challenges. How, if at all, has that been affecting you? So even taking it a step further, people say housing crisis, but that could be totally different things. Like we don't have enough workforce housing, or we're landlocked. We don't. There's no more land, or we have land, but we can't get people to develop it at an affordable pace. Are there any challenges that you guys are seeing with that growth?
All of the above.
Okay.
I mean, it really is. Nationwide housing is probably one of the number one issues we're all dealing with in local government. We're no different. Some of the things that really are affecting us, I'd say a little differently. Almost all of our companies are growing in some respect. We've got companies coming into the area. We've got tremendous local companies that operate on a global scale. And for a community as small as we are, it's pretty unique to have 6, 7 global companies that have major operations or their headquarters are in the city or around the city and surrounding communities. So we're really the central hub for a lot of their staff, their recreation, their cultural activities, things like that. So for us, every housing type is really in need. When I came on in 2023, the city had done a housing study in 2021. And, we're looking at what's going on in the market compared to what research had been done in 21. Obviously, that's during the COVID era. One of the, I'd say, big miscalculations really was they were projecting something like a 5% decrease in our manufacturing jobs. And we've seen about a 17% increase in our manufacturing jobs. So we knew that just the run of the mill data wasn't supporting what was really going on in the community. So we recommissioned update of the housing study in 2024. And one of the components of that was we required the housing study to talk to all the employers to better understand their situation. And it was interesting, just general assumptions we'd make would be, we need workforce housing. We heard that, but we also heard we need executive level housing because we're having issues with folks that are young professionals that, they might have their bachelor's or master's degrees from all over the world, and they come here and they have a situation where they struggle to retain them, after year 3, 4, or 5, because they just can't settle in. The lack of, necessarily what they're accustomed to in bigger cities around the world isn't necessarily available here. Obviously summertime is great. Wisconsin winters are a little different, especially if you didn't grow up here. Um, and that's, trying to address all of that. So from the city's perspective, we've used our various incentives, things like that, to target all levels of housing. So we've got a couple, subsidized low income housing, and then we've got a few projects that are, high end market rate, going to, reset kind of that rent per square foot. And then we've got a lot of projects in between. And, you get back to that discussion of affordable housing, workforce housing. The reality is that's different to every person. There's not just a general category that, here's the mark and that's what we're shooting for. So we've kind of created 3 different groups in which we go after projects. So, you've got that subsidized Section 8 housing. We've got a couple different projects partners that we're working with on those projects. And then we've got another kind of group that would fall more into that workforce housing, where it's 30% of the county's mean income. So we do, instead of doing a income based, we actually do a rental rate cap. So if we provide an incentive, we have developers that for the life of their development agreement, which is typically 20 to 27 years, they can't charge over a certain rate, which is, the 30% of the county median income. So then they have to certify that back to us. So they're not necessarily verifying the income of the folks in the property, but they're certifying to us that those properties are available. So, we've been very successful so far. We need about 5,200 housing units in the next 5 years, which is substantial for a community of our size. We're not giving out incentives, anything like some of the larger communities are having to do. I think there's a lot of interest in our community because we pull folks from the entire region. They're a lot more comfortable understanding that, in our housing study, we were able to identify, manufacturing wages have grown 25% over the last 5 years in the community. So they're seeing that. They're seeing the businesses are reinvesting on a pretty substantial scale right now, in almost every industry in our community. So we've got a little more traction with developers that they're willing to, look at that investment into the city, as opposed to, we'll invest there, but we want, 100% incentives, things like that. We've been able to keep it pretty minimal compared to what we've seen in some other communities. So we have been successful. Obviously, it's going to take several years to see that success kind of work its way into the market rate. Eventually we'll start seeing the affordability come down, and that's the ultimate goal, is to make sure that we've got a healthy real estate market and a market that folks can work here and live here.
That's incredible. It's such a challenge to balance all those different facets. And it seems in that housing study, like, you guys really saw that it's not just one square peg into one square hole. It's you really have to get creative and address all the different issues that can come up. Now, as you guys, and I think I know a little bit of the answer, the city has to do a good job of keeping that young talent and keeping young people, and then also people have to want to work in public service. They need that bench to come in. So what have you guys been doing to reach out to younger people, or what's being done in the city to keep younger?
We've, as far as like the city as an employer with our employees, we've really tried to kind of focus on reestablishing the HR department when I took over, really had 2 or 3 employees that had just started. They hadn't been there very long. The director position had been vacant or turned over every year or two. So, we were able to get a contract employee that came on as an employee. And we've really worked to, work on an onboarding program, try to change our policies to make them more employee friendly. We're still working through that. But, basically from the employer side, going from almost no programs whatsoever to now instituting an actual program. And we're starting to see a lot of the fruits of that. We try to keep an eye on, our historic turnover rates, things like that. The records are a little rough, but we're looking at, historically before we started all of this, it seemed like the city had somewhere in the ballpark about a 30% turnover, and we're down to about a 13% turnover. Substantial change in a 2-year period, very positive. Our police department, our police chief, we were having a discussion with our subcommittee. The police chief said for the first time since 2008, they're fully staffed. So, and you're not hearing this in other communities. Other communities we can't find recruits. We can't even get people to apply. And we actually have waiting lists for folks that are eligibility lists where they've interviewed and they're qualified and they're waiting for an opening. So, our police department is very good at training, and they have very low turnover compared to what we see nationally. Same thing with our fire department. Public works, very low turnover. So, our big departments, we're really seeing low turnover. And, a lot of that I attribute to, obviously our department heads do a great job of working with their staff, communicating, making them feel part of not only the department, but the organization. We've reinstituted employee events. So we try different things, see how it works. Some are really popular. Like we did Fifth Monday Fun. So every Monday, that was the fifth Monday, we would go out. I think we threw axes one night. We did trivia as a group, invite every employee. They can come out. We buy some food, some snacks, and I think we did a golf simulator and, just fun stuff to keep folks engaged. Our employee banquet at the end of the year, I think we had close to 200 employees and their spouses show up last year. So nearly a 50% turnout of our employees. Our summer, we always do a summer picnic. We brought out food trucks out to one of our local parks, and we reserved the park for city staff, and really great turnout there. Had every department, their folks came down, had lunch, and they were able to have lunch with employees that they don't ever really get to see, other than in the course of business. So, trying to make things more engaging and more fun for staff. And then obviously communications, working to make sure that, we've reinstituted reimbursement for education. It never really went away, but they just kind of had it but didn't fund it. So we've got a number of folks that are taking advantage of that, working on their ability to grow that talent in-house and, things like that, trying to support our employees in a more positive manner. From the public side of things, that was one of the things that we did hear from a lot of our larger employers was just, the activities that necessarily younger folks are looking for are not the same activities that folks look for 20 years ago. Livability is a huge factor. The vibrancy of our park system, looking at, in the downtown of the city of Sheboygan, we have the Weil Center. The Weil Center is Spanish architecture, theater, gorgeous facility. They've seen the need for increasing. They're putting in about a $22 million renovation into the downtown. We've got multiple, like I said, we have the Kohler Arts Center and then the Kohler Arts Preserve on the west side of town. And then in the downtown's the Arts Center. The city is partnering with Kohler and those two foundations. And the city council actually purchased a building that will be turned into a arts and innovation center and will be owned or be operated by these groups, giving an opportunity for a maker's place for artists to come in and kind of reside in the community, be part of the community, and do their art there. And obviously, we've got locations for them to display their art and be more involved and engaged in the community. Um, Kind of on the recreation side, the city has 74 acres on the south side of the city, and we're partnering with some local groups to develop that into a sports complex. So, soccer, football, baseball, softball, and one of the area businesses owns some land by it. They're including that into that property so that you've got a large sports complex that can hold regional level events. So kind of trying to hit each of interest for younger folks and families to be active, be engaged, and then reinvesting into our parks. We've got two of our, I would say, larger use parks. We're looking at pretty substantial renovations. One is down on the lakefront. We did a master plan revitalization of our marina and lakefront area. So we're going through that right now. We're looking at about a $17 million investment in the first phase of redoing and providing some better public spaces and revitalizing the marina so that the boaters have a better experience and better utilization of that as well. A lot of various projects going on to
Yeah,
enhance.
it sounds like you guys are doing a lot, and that's what I wanted to tease out. It was, I guess, I didn't not expect it, but when we chatted, you just said so much about that was keeping young people there. Like that is, I don't hear that all the time. I just honestly don't.
Yes.
But I think it's very important with the if you're expecting to have a growing city and to continue the growth, you need to shift the not the focus away, but shift to include the focus of young people. And I definitely see that you guys are doing that. I definitely wanted to tease that out. Now, just in general, is there any initiative or program or project that's coming up that you're excited about?
Honestly, all of them. It's the the it's really nice. We have a very supportive council that they hear the messaging coming from the business community. They hear it from the residents. The mayor and I were just discussing. He was at a one of our community groups was doing a lunch meeting with them, and he had a number of folks that came up to him and said, "Yeah, our housing situation is really bad because kids go off to college, they come back and they can't find a home here. They can't even rent a property here, and the jobs are there, the job growth is there, the wages, obviously, the whole spectrum of wage levels of wages are in our community. There's just not housing for almost any level of wage earners. So, it's really nice and gives a lot of satisfaction to me personally to, find a solution to that and get folks into housing that definitely need and they can, live and work and want to stay in our communities. The housing initiative, I'm very proud of what we're doing there, the work we're doing with our businesses. I'm a strong subscriber to the asset-based economic development, and we've really focused on that. We focused on, when we're doing our infill development, like our downtown area, we're looking at businesses that will complement the existing businesses, whether it's, something that's going to, maybe drive foot traffic in that area or drive, you know, opportunity like what we're doing a hotel on one property, that'll be a complement to the Wild Center and what they're doing in their development. At the same time, we don't want to hurt existing businesses. So we try to manage that and balance that out as best we can. On the south side, we've got a pretty large development going on down there, about 274 acres, and making sure that we master plan that to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the residents now and into the future as the city continues to grow. So, the initiatives that we're making on the art side of things and the culture side of things, there's a lot more to come. We're working on community art and different things with various groups, but the small steps that we're making and seeing the support we're getting from those groups and members of the community, it's really satisfying, the amount of work. And there's always negativity that's involved and you get a lot of negative feedback, but the vast majority is that positive feedback that people really like and enjoy what we're doing. And for me, that's what's fulfilling and rewarding in this job.
Love that. And I love how attentive you guys are to crafting, like with specifically like with the downtown. We don't want to just bring any business. We don't want to just create. We want to make sure that everything is complementary. And I think that's very thoughtful. And I'm sure those business owners can appreciate that. Now, I've heard a ton of positive, just incredible things from growth to outreach to youth to development. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask. Everything can't be all roses and sunshine. If there is one challenge, and with this, I'll give you unlimited budget, unlimited workforce, unlimited time, and you can just snap your fingers and it'll be gone. What would that challenge be?
Housing. I mean,
Understood.
every aspect of the housing affects our business, our tourism. It affects people's quality of life. We've got great amenities, but we have way more demand than we have supply, and that's from our homeless population through our executive level population. We need housing solutions at every level, and that would be hands down the top issue if we could snap our fingers and that was resolved, because it is very contentious. It's very personal for folks. And from our perspective, we hear it, but we only have so much resources and we only have so many tools, and we live it as well, right?
Very, very true. And I think I know across the nation, housing is such a pivotal issue. It can bring up a lot of emotion around
Yeah.
certain people, around a lot of people. So I definitely think it is a tough one that I wish I had the ability to just snap my fingers and help out. Uh, Starting to push more to the future, to the more legacy side of things. In 25 years, what are people going to be saying about Sheboygan?
And hopefully in 25 years, we've addressed that housing situation, and, the investments that we're making now, with an eye on the future. I really hope folks are very, very impressed and proud of the decisions we've made and the investments that we've made. A lot of the investments that we're doing because of the level of growth, we're doing, projects that some folks would only see once in their career. And we've got, a couple of our sewer projects. We've been talking about that. It's, most people do one of these level of projects in their career, and we've got two or three, complete replacements going on for the entire south side of the city. We just put in the city's had since inception. It actually started out as a private water utility, and then the city bought it, I think, in the late 1800s. But they've been using the same water intake ever since then. It provides enough water for the entire city and two adjacent communities that we also provide water to. We put in a second one last year. So, the marina, it was designed in the 80s, built in the 90s. It's definitely reached its useful life. That redesign and repurposing of that, a lot of the feedback that we got was that a lot of the community, despite the fact that it's publicly funded, felt that it was a private area, a private club, a private marina, and they didn't realize that their tax dollars were subsidizing a lot of that. So, um, the a lot of the intent behind the design was that simply, how do we get the public to better interact in there, use that park? I mean, it's a very popular park with a marina, but they kind of felt that one area of it wasn't park. So we kind of took a different approach, and in the master plan, we actually didn't start with something that came from the politicians or the bureaucrats. We actually started the conversation with the public with a simple question of what could change down here that would help you to better utilize the park and utilize this area. And we got a lot of really, things that we wouldn't have thought of, because, everybody, different walks of life, different ways they want to recreate. So it was great. It was great conversation. Again, you got some very passionate folks that, they didn't want to see that. So it's a hard balance, but now we're kind of at that point of where we're going to start building out some of that. And, in 50 years, I would hope that, they're as passionate about what we've done now as they are now with this project once it's completed, and 50 years from now that, that change, really resonates, and they feel that that's part of the community and the icon of the community.
Love that. And you hit the other, I'd say housing, it comes up the most, and then infrastructure is a very close second. Just, I mean, you kind of laid it out. Some of these things were made hundreds of years ago. And, at that point in time, it may have been federally built out, or there
Yep.
was a lot more like support. And now it's like we're on the hook for the maintenance. And now if you haven't, it sounds like you guys have been on top of it, but certain cities and communities across the nation haven't. And it's like now we have to redo this entire thing. So infrastructure is another big thing, but I love how that tied into your future vision, which is a vision of utility and people utilizing the public spaces that their tax dollars are truly going towards. And the fact that you took the time to not just from the top down tell them this is what you need and this is what you're getting. It's what do you need, how would you utilize it, and how can we make this better for everyone. So I definitely tip my hat to you there. And I have to ask, any final words for our viewers, for our young people, for people that should be moving to Sheboygan or are already in Sheboygan?
Sheboygan is a great community, great place to live. For folks that are interested in the Midwest, it's, the Malibu of the Midwest. Our surfing season, ironically, I think they said the best surfing is October to March. So during the coldest part of the year, but it's a beautiful city, great place to live, great place to visit. But, and folks that are interested in local government, it's a very challenging career, but it's a very rewarding career. If you want to make a difference, this is the career field that you can make a difference in your community, helping your neighbors out, helping your kids, future generations. And you have the ability to really address solutions in the short term and in the long term. It's a great career path to get into. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Pleasure's all mine, Casey. That really, when after we had that conversation, I was just excited to show especially our younger viewers, just like what can be done in a city to make them comfortable and happy to be there. So I definitely appreciate you guys, and thank you again for being here.
Yes, thank you.
There it is. Well, to all the viewers, thank you so much. Again, this has been the Jentry Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Mason, and I was joined by Casey Bradley, City Administrator of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Thank you very much. Have a great one.